300 Seconds at Gettysburg. I'm licensed battlefield guide Chris Army. I'm standing here today in Herbst Woods, located west of town. Herbst Woods is the scene of some very heavy fighting on July 1st, 1863. To give you a little bit of a context here, let's go back to the morning of July 1st, 1863. Now, the Union cavalry west of town has discovered Confederates marching towards the town of Gettysburg. Around 7:30 in the morning, the first shots of the Battle of Gettysburg are fired. Now, Confederates are going to respond by putting 1,500 men north of the Chambersburg Turnpike and 1,500 men south of the Chambersburg Turnpike. The Confederates south of the Turnpike are led by Brigadier General James Archer. Now, as they approach the lower part of Herbst Woods on the other side of Willoughby Run, they'll run into staunch resistance by Union soldiers of the famed Iron Brigade. These are tough men from the Midwestern states of Wisconsin, Indiana, and Michigan. As the fighting is increasing, the 24th Michigan Regiment of the Iron Brigade is going to splash across Willoughby Run and get on the flank or the end of Archer's men and capture many of the Confederates, including Archer himself, before driving the Confederates back about a mile west, back to a location known as Hare's Ridge. Now, the fighting's going to go into a lull around noon as each side prepares for more attacks. Now, on the Union side, this area of woods is protected by the 24th Michigan. Their monument is behind me. The 24th is a relatively new regiment to the brigade. They're in the center of the brigade line. The more experienced soldiers from Wisconsin, Indiana are on the outer sides of the brigade line. The 24th Michigan is led by Colonel Henry Morrow, and as the 496 men are preparing for the attacks, Major General Abner Doubleday, who's now in command because Major General John Reynolds of the Union Army has been killed earlier that morning, and Doubleday is going to ask the men if they can hold. The reply that comes, "If we cannot hold this ground, where will you find the men that can?" They're prepared to make a very stubborn resistance. Now, on the Confederate side, preparing for the attack, is Brigadier General James Johnston Pettigrew. In the largest regiment in his brigade is the 26th North Carolina with approximately 839 men. In fact, this is one of the largest, if not the largest, regiments in Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. This regiment, the 26th North Carolina, is led by a 21-year-old young man named Henry Burgwin, Jr., the boy colonel as he is known. Now, the lieutenant colonel of the regiment is a farmer. His name is John Randolph Lane. He's from Chatham County, North Carolina. Lane is in his late 20s, and when he wakes up that morning, he's not feeling very well. In fact, he's going to ask Colonel Burgwin for permission not to engage in the fight today. But Henry Burgwin will offer a swig of brandy from his flask and tell Lieutenant Colonel Lane, "Colonel, I cannot imagine going into this fight without you." And when the fighting does resume in the afternoon, Lieutenant Colonel Lane is ready to go. The fight is going to get underway after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, once Robert E. Lee has shown up on the battlefield. Lee is going to have a look around, and he likes what he sees. He believes that he may have an opportunity to destroy, or at least very much demoralize, 2 corps of the Union Army. Now, when the attack starts, the fighting between Pettigrew's brigade and the Iron Brigade is a slugfest. Flag bearers and men on both sides are falling quickly, being killed or wounded. See, carrying the flag in battle during the Civil War was an honor. To lose your flag in battle was a dishonor. But to capture your enemy's flag was considered a great achievement. Therefore, the men would always try to shoot the flag bearers so that it would cause disruption in being able to understand the orders of going forward or retreating. Now, in this fight, the flag bearers on both sides are falling rapidly. As the 26th North Carolina made its way up this slope and into the woods behind us, they've already lost several flag bearers. At one point, Colonel Burgwin himself will take the flag forward, and he will be mortally wounded as he does so. Now, not long after that, as yet another flag bearer has been shot down, Colonel Lane will take the colors and say, "It is my turn to take them now. 26, follow me." And they're going to continue to push the 24th Michigan back towards Seminary Ridge. Now, as the 24th Michigan came out of the east side of the woods, one of their members, Private Charles McConnell, he wants to get in one last shot. Now, the story goes that he rested his rifle against a tree and took a bead on the flag bearer, who was then Lieutenant Colonel Lane. Now, Lieutenant Colonel Lane, the shot is fired. The ball will strike Lane in the back of the neck, smash through his jaw and his mouth, and the colors of the 26th North Carolina fell that day for the 14th time. This will stop the momentum of the 26th North Carolina going forward. Now, that part of the attack is slowed down, but it's going to be renewed by additional Confederate forces put in by Robert E. Lee. Men of the 24th Michigan that are still able to do so will make their way back to the seminary for a final stand on July 1st. Lieutenant Colonel Lane will actually recover from this wound and rejoin the regiment, and he'll be with the regiment until the end of the war. He's going to be wounded 3 more times, and each time he's wounded, it seems surprising to the surgeons that he's able to recover. Colonel Lane is going to return to Chatham County, North Carolina, in his life of farming. He's also going to build a prosperous real estate, mercantile, and livestock company. And he was described as a quiet, unimposing, and unpretentious gentleman of the Old South. John Lane will pass away on December 31st, 1908, at the age of 73. 5 years before his death, he returned to Gettysburg on the 40th anniversary of the battle. In fact, he was invited to be a keynote speaker. With him was a Chicago pharmaceutical executive named Charles McConnell, the man who had shot Lane on McPherson's Ridge 4 decades earlier. They now addressed each other as dear old friend, and before a crowd of several thousand, the 2 former enemies greeted each other. McConnell will say, "I thank God I did not kill you." They heartily shook hands, and then Lane stood up to speak to the crowd, and when he did, the crowd hushed. There were many in the crowd that day that could not imagine what he described, because they were of a new generation. But he began his speech, "I was once a soldier." And here he was, an old man, telling a young man's story of smoke and fire, shouts, of volleys, of brave enemies in black hats and fallen color bearers. And he tried to tell them about courage and confusion and what it was like to be in a battle. He told them of the flag bearers that had fallen, including Colonel Burgoyne. He tried to explain to them what it was like to look into the face of a 21-year-old young man when that boyish light in his eyes was starting to fade. He gave them brutal numbers, awful statistics about 800 young and healthy men with homes and families and futures reduced to just over 250 by the time the battle was over. He told the men of the 26th North Carolina in the audience that day, "Your valor is coming to be regarded as the common heritage of the American nation. It no longer belongs to your state alone. It no longer belongs to the South. It is the high watermark of what Americans have done and can do." And then he wept in front of everybody, without apology. The old warrior said, as he looked at the tiny remnant of the 26th North Carolina in the audience that day, "I give you the highest tribute, a comrade's tears." For 300 Seconds at Gettysburg, I'm licensed battlefield guide Chris Army. Thanks for joining me today.